Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. Ricketts, aye. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Mr. Coons, no. Mrs. Brett, aye. Mr. Moran, aye. Mr. McCormick, aye. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Mullen, aye. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. James, aye. Mrs. Capito, aye. Mr. Scott, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Schmidt, aye. Mr. Risch, aye. Ms. Slotkin, no. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Ms. Blunt Rochester, no. Miss Rosen, no. Mr. Peters, no. Mr. Kelly, no. Mr. King, no. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mr. Ossoff, no. Mrs. Murray, no. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Warner, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Durbin, no. Mr. Cruz, aye. Ms. Baldwin, no. Mr. Murphy, no. Mr. Schumer, no. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Ms. Hassan, no. Mrs. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen. No. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse. No. Mr. Markey. Mr. Markey. No. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schatz. No.
On this vote, the yeas are 51, the nays are 46, and the motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
The judiciary, Eric Chun-Yi Tung of California to be United States Circuit Judge for the Ninth Circuit.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to legislative session.
Majority Leader,
I move to proceed to legislative session.
questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to executive session to consider executive calendar number 421.
Questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion is agreed to. Clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, Department of State, Caleb Orr of Texas to be an Assistant Secretary.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
Clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on the nomination of Caleb Orr of Texas to be an Assistant Secretary of State, Economic and Business Affairs, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent that reading the names be waived.
Without objection.
And I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session and be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have one request for a committee to meet during today's session of the Senate. It has the approval of the majority and minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, November the 4th, following the prayer and pledge. The journal proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, the time for the 2 leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each, and the cloture motion with respect to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, ripened at 11:30 a.m. Further, that the Senate recess from 12:30 to 2:15 p.m. to allow for the weekly conference meetings, and at 2:15 p.m. the Senate execute the order of October 30th in relation to the confirmation of the Dunlop nomination.
Without objection.
Mr. President, if there is no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned to the previous order following the remarks of Senator Merkley.
Without objection.
Mr. President,
Senator from Oregon.
I ask unanimous consent to grant floor privileges to my interns on their shadow days, Flora Shaw on November 5th, 2025, Nida Nair on November 20th, 2025, and Maxwell Robin on December 4th, 2025.
Without objection.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. President Trump has developed a new MAHA strategy. Instead of Make America Healthy Again, his new strategy is Make America Hungry Agenda. He is weaponizing food against America's most vulnerable families. In my state of Oregon, that means cutting off food to 757,000 people, including 210,000 children and 130,000 seniors. Now, when you think about these numbers, they're hard to envision, but you know, Oregon is roughly 300 miles from the northern border to the southern border. I-5 runs the entire length of the state. So if all of those individuals were lined up on the highway, they would be just 2 feet apart for 300 miles. And every third person, approximately, would be a child. That's the level of impact that we are talking about. You know, when children go without food, the impact is pretty significant. There's the impact on their physical development. There's the impact on their mental development. And of course, if you're hungry, you can't learn a damn thing in school. So 3 ways of really hurting America's children, millions of American children. And Congress together, Democrats and Republicans, said this should never happen. The House and the Senate together said this should never happen. So together we created 2 tools. The first tool is a SNAP contingency fund, meant to ensure that families can keep putting food on the table. And the second tool is interchange authority that allows the Secretary of Agriculture to use tariff funds to supplement the contingency fund. Back in September, USDA's, U.S. Department of Agriculture's website, noted that it planned to use the contingency funds in order to make sure that SNAP was delivered in November. But then in October, last month, it deleted that language, and the president said, "My hands are tied. America's most vulnerable families must go hungry." Well, now, we know that the administration certainly was well aware of the contingency fund because it was on their website. And we know that the Department of Agriculture is well aware of its ability to use the interchange to transfer funds from a program that would enable it to provide the full SNAP benefits in the month of November. In fact, it's just used this interchange recently in both October and November for the WIC program. Right now, Section 32 funds, there's $23 billion in there. So just 1/5 of those funds would enable the full November SNAP funds to be distributed. Last week, I saw a speech by Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, on television. And he was saying that Republicans are not going to provide SNAP funds because it would reduce pressure on Democrats to reopen the government. In other words, Mr. President, the Speaker of the House was saying that America's families, most vulnerable families, the health and welfare of the children, the seniors, most vulnerable adults, that they're just bargaining chips. Well, let me tell you, our vulnerable families are not bargaining chips. Basic food for children is not a bargaining chip. So we're here to say, hell no. It is not acceptable to use children and the most vulnerable as bargaining chips. That's why 25 states and the District of Columbia filed a suit to the U.S. Department of Agriculture to say that it's illegal to stop funding SNAP. And on Friday of last week, 2 judges agreed in 2 different jurisdictions, in Massachusetts and in Rhode Island, and they said to the Trump administration, you must proceed to fund SNAP. The contingency fund is there for that purpose, and you have other funds to enable through the interchange to provide the full amount in November. Both are needed because there's about $4.65 billion, we're told, left in the contingency fund, but SNAP in a single month can be $8 to $9 billion. So that second tool is essential. And again, there's $23 billion in there waiting to be used. So there is absolutely no reason not to fund the full SNAP benefits for the month of November. But then the administration responded to the court, and they said, we're not going to do it. We'll use the contingency funds, but we're not going to use the interchange authority. We choose not to fund the full benefits for November. Well, this results in 2 problems. The first is that instead of about $6 a day, which is the standard average SNAP benefit, it'll be about $3 a day. Well, $3 a day isn't very much to feed any member of a family. But there's a second problem that's even worse. And this problem is that the U.S. Department of Agriculture said in a court document filed today, and I have it right here, ask unanimous consent that this court document may be part of the official record, Mr. President. Thank you so much. This court document was filed today by Patrick Penn. He is the Deputy Undersecretary for Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services at the Department of Agriculture. And he says, quote, USDA's understanding is that the system changes states must implement to provide the reduced benefit amounts will take from a few weeks to up to several months. So here's the situation. The court said, fund SNAP and do it right away. Today, the administration filed this document saying it will take weeks to months because they're choosing to fund only half and everything has to be reprogrammed in the computer system to make that happen at the federal level and for most states. That is not an acceptable strategy. That's going back to saying people are not going to get SNAP benefits in November. You know, this resolution that I have tonight, it's very simple and expresses a number of thoughts that I've heard from both sides of the aisle. It is the sense of the Senate that the Trump administration is obligated to fund SNAP through the use of the contingency fund. And the courts have made that very clear. Second, the administration has the authority in the funds to finance SNAP through the month of November, which we know because they have both the contingency fund and they have the interchange fund. And third, exercising this power is extremely important to the health and wellness of families experiencing hunger, including about 16 million children, 8 million seniors, 4 million people with disabilities, and about 1.2 million veterans. And finally, the administration should exercise its legal authority to fund SNAP in November. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Mr. President, children, seniors, the disabled, the veterans, our most vulnerable family, they are not bargaining chips. It is simply wrong to treat them as bargaining chips. It's wrong to adopt a position in which they will not even get funded in November after the courts have said, fund it. There is enormous damage that is done when children are deprived of food, to their health, to their mental development, to their physical development, to their ability to learn in school. And of course, there's damage done mentally and physically to all of the adults who are funded in this program. Food deprivation is not a correct strategy for any government in the United States of America. Trump's Make America Hungry Again agenda is wrong. It is immoral. There's just something that really seems like the United States is way off kilter when we have a president who's absolutely passionately excited about building a giant golden ballroom worthy of Louis XIV to feast, to dine and dance with billionaires and power brokers of the world, while letting, and in fact forcing, America's children and vulnerable families to go hungry. I thank Senator Schumer and the other 44 or other additional 44 co-sponsors who have joined this resolution. I invited all 100 senators to join it. The 5 points are certainly ones that I've heard expressed on both sides of the aisle. Let's all together say fund SNAP, not weeks or months from now, but right now, so America's families in every state, regardless of how they're represented in this chamber, will benefit. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to immediate consideration of my resolution, which is at the desk. Further, the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Majority Whip.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. This isn't lawmaking. This is a political stunt by the Democrats. The resolution they're offering is empty. It is meaningless. Democrats shut down this government. Democrats have voted against reopening the government 13 times. Democrats are holding food assistance for 42 million Americans hostage, and they're going to do it again tomorrow. They're doing it tonight. Democrats knew their actions threatened food assistance. They were fully aware of it. This was organized and orchestrated in Chuck Schumer's office months in advance of the shutdown. The Department of Agriculture warned the Democrats weeks ago what was going to happen. So did local newspapers around the country. As a matter of fact, a newspaper in the senator's home state of Oregon reported, quote, "Food is the first thing to go." The Oregon paper went on to say, Oregonians brace for SNAP delays if federal shutdown drags on. And still, for 34 days, Democrats have voted time and time again to keep the government closed. Democrats hadn't voted 13 times to shut down the government, there wouldn't be these lines that we're seeing on television down and around the block at food banks all around the country. The senator from Oregon just talked about using children, using people as pawns, as political pawns. Well, that's exactly what the Democrat whip in the House had said. So, of course, there's going to be suffering. So it gives them leverage. Senators in this body, Democrats, have said exactly the same thing. The Democrats have continued to use people as pawns for political purposes, and it's wrong. It has to stop. If Democrats really wanted to help struggling families, they'd stop blocking a clean continuing resolution. The shutdown ends when Democrats end their dangerous political games. And it is a dangerous political game, and even the Washington Post has pointed that out. Want to end the food assistance cliff? It's easy. Pass the clean bipartisan continuing resolution. Democrats should vote for it immediately. Until then, Mr. President, the Schumer shutdown is going to continue to hurt struggling families. Therefore, Mr. President, I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from Oregon.
I had really hoped that given the 5 basic planks of this resolution, which have been expressed on both sides of the aisle, that we could have something other than arguments that sound like, I don't know, moldy bread, stale cheese, arguments we've heard time and time again about a shutdown. But, you know, my resolution and my remarks tonight didn't even mention a shutdown. And why is that? Because the shutdown is irrelevant as to whether or not the November SNAP payments are made. We have a contingency fund for that purpose. We created, Democrats and Republicans together, interchange authority for that purpose. There are more than $23 billion sitting in that interchange fund, Section 32, tariff funded. The money is there. The legal authority is there. And this resolution simply says that failing to provide SNAP benefits hurts millions of people and encourages the president to do what the courts asked him to do, told him to do last Friday, to provide the funds. But the administration sneered at the court. They said, we're going to adopt a strategy in which the funds may not get to people for weeks or months, because we're going to do it in a fashion that requires a reprogramming of computers across America. Really? There's only one desk that has the power to immediately make these funds available, and that's the desk in the Oval Office. Shouldn't we, representing the people in each of our states, come together in a bipartisan fashion to say that depriving people of food, the most vulnerable families of food across America, is simply wrong? Mr. President, and I'm speaking to Mr. President Trump, President Trump, you have the authority, you have the funds, you have the responsibility. Make America Hungry agenda, your agenda of starving children and vulnerable families, is wrong. Surely, that's something both Democrats and Republicans can agree on. Let's keep pressing for the president to get those funds to America's vulnerable families immediately. Thank you, Mr. President.
Under the previous order, the Senate stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.